Yeah, okay, everybody. This is Rick, and this is a rehearsal I'm doing for a talk that I'm going to do tomorrow. But this is it's close to what it revamped the slides a lot in the last 3, 4 rehearsals. But I'm hoping with people interacting with me, be I'll be able to roll with that and adjust and all that, and just go, just go, just go with it. Let's go talk about. Let's do the presentation. Okay, good. I'm also mindful of my rehearsal broadcast. So, um, how to make a simple ebook. This is what we'll try to cover in this jam-packed 1 hour. Do I couldn't come up with a way to do a class other than to suggest that the homework will be to go and get these slides after and try to make your own EPUB out of the book that we're going to make yourself and go through the exercise. That would be the homework. That would be kind of making it like a class. But this is a show and tell of how you might go about making an EPUB. I just want to first mention, though, that in 2017 I made an EPUB and I put it on Amazon. I, in fact, put it on Amazon and I believe Barnes and Noble for their Nobu, Noku, and I made an EPUB. And the goal of me doing the book was to learn about EPUBs. What's inside, what's going on with them, how do I make one? Self publishing was for sure a thing. It's very much a thing. And I wanted to learn how to put my own stuff out there. And that's what I did. The book only sold 9 times though. So I'm saying if you want to be the 10th buyer, there's a QR code here. I'm just saying if you do. What's inside an ebook? What is an ebook? I really like this phrase by David Cudler. He has he was a guest blogger on a book blog, and all of these little asides and bits I have in the notes of these slides. So look forward to that when you get this, download this content later. Website in a box. I really do like that. When EPUBs were, when EPUBs format was being created, the the model that those people used was the World Wide Web. The internet and the World Wide Web had had of course been growing and showing how reflowable text could look. And if you've ever in your internet browser tried to download a website, you used to, and you still are, you can download the HTML of a website, the screen that you're looking at. And you can even download, I think there were some browsers that let you download even the images that were there. You can download the complete website. But website in a box, that's what an EPUB is. An EPUB is a container. It's a zip file. And that zip file contains HTML. HTML that's right here. It also contains a few other files to define itself. And that's governed by the ebook format that we happen to be using. But in addition to these other files, you can also put in style sheets, images, even for multimedia ebooks, you can put in movies. And there's even JavaScript and fonts. So it's a full website in a box. I really like that. In the end, that means that it's a container. So you can open it and see the entire book. We're going to do that in a second. I do want to mention, perhaps a little bit, the elephant in the room, that the EPUB is governed by a format. That format is called EPUB. It's a common standard. It's up to EPUB 3.3, and it's going through the process by the World Wide Web Consortium, W3C. The other big format, though, is Amazon's format. They use an older format called the Mobi Pocket, and I have notes in here too. The the Mobi Pocket reader had a document called Mobi, document format called Mobi, and Amazon, that's what they ended up using. They bought it, and that was the format. They rebranded it, and they even have their own format, Kindle. It's known by a lot of different names now. I think K. I, it's known by a lot of different names. But this slide, which is also a slide from another presentation, which I have notes to, this slide just shows that there's really two main formats, EPUB and Amazon. But don't worry that we are learning EPUB today. Amazon has lots of tools to convert an EPUB into an Amazon. So the first takeaway is, as long as you can make yourself a very nice EPUB, you're going to be able to make yourself a very nice Kindle book. And that's what the process that I did to make my book, which I think looks pretty nice. And it's a process that's actually very straightforward. So let's take a look inside an ebook. I'm going to bring up my screen here and pop over to a directory containing my ebook. This ebook is called Immediately Effective Instruction, written by an author that, did I just open this in Thorium? I guess I did. Let me, wow, okay. Yeah, I guess I did. That's fine. Uh, the the EPUB is this is the EPUB reader. It's called Thorium. I didn't expect to be opening this. I had another tool keyed up, but that's okay. The EPUB, as you can see, got 11 sections. I know this author. He was part of a publishing venture that I ended up joining him with. And there's a very basic navigation, table of contents here, etc. This is an EPUB, and you can take this EPUB and send it to your Kindle using a tool, or sending it to your Kindle's email and read it on your device. But because it's an EPUB, my zip tool, which here is 7-zip, I'm on a Windows machine. If I open this file, I can see all the different directories here. I can in fact see the individual HTML files, XHTML files, that make up this EPUB. And of course I could unzip this thing into a directory and look at these files, but then they're spread out over the multiple files and I think 3-4 directories. So I will use another tool to further examine this EPUB, and that tool is Sigil. Sigil is a open source EPUB editor, and it is a tool that I recommend for for authoring your own EPUB or updating an existing EPUB, perhaps one that you created using a conversion process. And we're going to get into all that. But Sigil, because of its open source nature and also because it's available on both Windows and Mac, it is a tool that people refer to, and it's constantly being updated. It's a tool that people reference for producing well conformant EPUB files. So if I take that same EPUB that we just looked at and open it in Sigil, what you'll see is, I'm going to go skip past this message. What you'll see is a layout here that shows all the different files, but it's got a little bit of a navigation. When you click on a file, if you double click on a file, you open it separately and you see a preview of that file here on the right. There's also a table of contents where you can also navigate. And the tool, there's a lot of buttons here. It's very rich with functionality. It allows you to, in fact, write your ebook entirely from scratch using this tool. You can also edit the table of contents, manipulate the metadata, and you can also add other files to this EPUB. In other words, you can add a file to the container that is this EPUB. So that's what's inside an ebook. It's a container that has a certain format, and it's I found with Amazon it was difficult to uncompress some of the files, but if you open up an EPUB, which the Amazon files are, if you open up an EPUB, you will find a website in a box. So we're going to go and make our, excuse me, I in order to make an ebook, well, first of all, do understand that you will be looking at some HTML. You'll have to come to grips with it. It's 2022. If HTML is new to you, there are tutorials to refresh your memory on or to fill your mind with what is HTML. It's a markup language that is used, and I'll talk about it as we look at some of the content. Then, if we want to continue making an ebook, well, then we're going to have to write some content or obtain some content. In this class, I'm not going to teach you how to write anything. We're going to content and just convert that into an EPUB. Once you have your content, I said you're going to have to format it, but you can also convert it. You can mix and match the two. You can go back and forth between these two techniques. Because I'm on a Windows machine, I am going to convert my content using a tool called Word to EPUB, but I'm initially going to format the content. I'm going to try two different workflows so that you can see just. We'll also talk briefly about making a book cover. This is a very big subject in and of itself, but I found some resources. I used a resource rather to make my own ebook cover. I think it looks decent for what I was going for. It's again, it's something that you can do using to that in a moment. Let's go and make our ebook now. And because the theme of this hackathon is hack kitchen, hack yeah, because it involves cooking. Let's go make a cookbook. We're gonna find some content, and we're gonna find a public domain cookbook. And I found one called The Italian Cookbook by Maria Gentile. I found it on this website called Project Gutenberg. If you're not familiar with it, it's a website that contains books whose copyright has expired. So these are essentially public domain books. These are copyrights in the United States. We can feel comfortable using these books. Now that we have this book, though, what we have to do is get this into Sigil. And first of all, note that nearly all of these books have EPUBs already. So what we're doing is for sure an exercise, but I think it's a worthwhile exercise. We're going to look at this book and look at its content in HTML. This is, when you look at it, it's a very large single web page, contains some boilerplate both at the beginning and at the end, and this is the EPUB right here. This is the electronic book right here. But in order for us to make this an EPUB, we need to do a process. And the first process that you might think is, you might recognize, hey, this is HTML I'm looking at. It's a web page. So we can save this as a file. I'm going to call it Maria Gentile version 9. We can save it as an HTML file, and then in Sigil, we can create a new file, made my default EPUB3, and we can bring in that file by saying add an existing file. That's the file that I had just downloaded, and voila, you see the ebook right here. It's got the basic HTML formatting that already it was from the internet, so this is all the HTML. One of the cool things about Sigil is that you can take an element, here H3, here H4, here paragraph, and every element that I click on, Sigil will note its starting or closing pair. In an EPUB, closing a pair. So this is a single EPUB, and one of the things that we can do, first of all, right now, this is, you can save this EPUB and copy it to your device, and you can be done. But there are a few things that we can do to make the EPUB behave a little better on the variety of ebook readers that are out there. First of all, number one, we can get rid of this boilerplate. So this here is boilerplate. The actual book starts here, where it says start. If I click on the preview anywhere, it will take us to that specific location. And what I can do is I can click on this, say, section, and recognize that, hey, this is actually all that boilerplate here. So now that I put my cursor here at section, I just go to where it matches here and just delete. That's all. And now the book has a proper starting point. Now there's some boilerplate at the end, so if I go all the way to the end, we can see that there's all this legalese, which I've not read, but Project Gutenberg, all these files are no longer have copyright. So one day I'll have to go through what all this means. But here there's a transcriber's note, and then the beginning of an index that Project Gutenberg put for this book, or transcribed from this book, because this book already existed with this index. I click on transcriber's notes here, and I'm here now in this section, and here there's a trans note here, and I can see that it begins here and ends here. I can just get rid of this, just like that. And all the edits appear here in real time. Now, I will take this section here, and I will notice that it goes all the way to the end. So as long as I go to this part here and do the same selection, go all the way to the end, and delete, then that boilerplate goes away as well. So this is making the ebook look a little nicer. We're getting rid of text that we don't want. The other thing that makes an ebook work well on ebook devices is to split up the book into more than one HTML file. Just like a website where if you had a very large HTML file, it will take the browser a little time to read it. So is the case for an ebook, even more so because on our computers, they're quite powerful machines compared to a device like your iPhone or Android. And if you actually use an ebook device, and I'm a big fan of the first generation Kindles, those things they're a lot slower. And one of the ways to help these devices is to chop up the file into multiple files. What we can do to do that is we can identify in here all of the different sections. The convention is you cut it up into chapters, and this thing too. So anywhere there's an H2, if I search for it, we can see that there's a section on paste, then a section on part 2, then another H2 here, preserves, ISIS, then the index, and then we're back to, oh, this is the navigation page. I searched all the files, so I'm going to just search the current file from now on. Now that we have identified that there are a set number of H2, if I click here and this number, it shows that there's 8, we can pick this as the place to break up the HTML. If I search for H2 again, look at the Italian cookbook, that's the beginning. I won't break up the text there, but here I'll here called split at cursor, and this will split your file where your cursor is. So I split it there, and it makes a whole new file with the rest of that HTML. And the previous HTML is now just the beginning part, the title. There's still a few more H2s in here, and I can go on in that same fashion to split at cursor where with a convenient shortcut. And everywhere there's an H2, I'm going to insert that split marker, and then at the end, I'm going to split the file everywhere there's a split marker. So I got to find all the H2s, insert that split marker using that shortcut. And once we have all of these H2s preceded by a split marker, I can now go to edit and split at the markers, and that will make multiple files based on wherever those split markers are. Now it's made what appears to be 6 new files. Now that our ebook is looking, I think it's looking acceptable for people to download this thing. But notice that the table of contents only contains one part here, the start, and this is actually pointing to a file that has nothing in it. I'm in fact going to delete this thing. This is a file that was part of the template for making a new file. I'm going to say delete mark file, and we will create a new table of contents by clicking on generate table of contents. What we'll see here is that Sigil detects all of the header tags, header HTML tags, and organizes it by its level. H2, followed by H3, followed by H4, etc. There are no H1 header tags in this document. So to make a simple table of contents, we can just select only up to level 2, and that will make a table of contents that looks like this. But if we wanted to include recipes, we can then click on up to level 3, and it will include this. But where are the recipes? It turns out the recipes are in level 4. And now we're including them all. So what the way that I found that made it work is we can include up to level 2 and then click on this button here, which says show me the table of contents items only. If you click this to unselect it, apologies for the double negative there, but you will then pick all of the other headings that you did not pick. And now you can then pick these one by one. Now, I'm not going to pick all of these. There's from this number here, there are 200 or so recipes. I'm just going to pick a few and make a table of contents from that. I'll pick a few from their nice dessert section, almond cake. They also had some quite strange looking items in here. Here's orange ice. I want that. I want tutti frutti. And say when I press OK here, now the table of contents that's generated contains there's some levels here, and it makes it obviously if we went through the trouble of selecting all of these, we would have a pretty nice looking table of contents with all the recipes. But as I said, there's 200 recipes when we go to that very last page here. Ices. This number here, 216, represents the recipe number. So our ebook looks pretty good. I think now we can start thinking about that cover. And when I think about the cover, I'm we're going to step away from Sigil in a minute and spend a little time in Microsoft Word. There's this resource which I will put in the PowerPoint, and there'll be links to this, and I'll put it in the chat if depending on how I can multitask. This web page, DIY book covers, is a superb resource. Specifically, this YouTube, the Part 1 YouTube, where he takes a picture and makes it a cover just using Microsoft Word. I'm just going to demonstrate it, but I urge people who want to pursue this to go and look at this for themselves. There's a good amount of the detail I'm going to leave out, and I'll touch on briefly. But Derek Murphy, who is the author of this site and a number of others, and well as several books, and he's a frequent blogger and podcaster and guest on podcasts, but he does provide resources to people who want to self-publish. And the technique for making an ebook for Microsoft Word is to first pick a good picture. And I found one here on this website, Flickr. I use Flickr because I'm aware that it can search for pictures that allow for public and commercial use, where the only quote payment is to attribute the photographer. And in Flickr, you can search for these pictures. Obviously, if you find a picture you like and all rights are reserved, well, you probably shouldn't be using that picture. The other aspect about pictures, and again, I'm not an expert, but the other aspect about pictures is that you can find other websites where you can just buy pictures. You can buy pictures that evoke an Italian cookbook. But that's one way. You have to find a good picture, though, and I have, and I'm going to now go into Microsoft Word. make a new document, and I'm going to bring in that picture. Go. And this picture, oh, the other thing we're going to do is we're going to get rid of the margins in the layout. And the other piece that I'm missing, another important detail, is that you need to size the the, the paper in a certain size. I don't know if it's 6 by 9 or if it's the ratio has to be 6 by 9, but once you have this photo, another detail is you got to make it so that all the text appears in front of it. So, but what that means is you have to make the photo behind the text. We'll show you that in a second what that means. But if I click on the picture, I can then resize it and and just crank it up and then move it around and find a good angle, and then make sure you don't have any of the book there. But once you find a good angle, then you're going to insert a text box. This is one way to do it. Simple text box, and you put the title in there. The Italian Cookbook. And we're going to also, of course, we're going to have to crank up the size of this thing, 48. And this object, the text box, we can update its settings so that we can say uh, no fill. We can say that there's no line, and um, we can then take this text here and just change its color to be maybe this, for example. I don't know. That's very plain, but it gets the job done, and it's illustrative of what the book cover making process is. At some point, you're going to put maybe a subtitle. At some point, you're going to put the name on here, of course. But this is the essence of it. The other thing that I like about Derek's resource is that this is my cover, but in Derek's resource, one of the things that you can download from his site is the list of fonts that evoke a particular genre. So if you're writing a novel that's a thriller, these are the fonts that you would probably use, versus if you were to write a romance. These are the fonts to use. And I'm not a designer. I'm not a web designer. I'm not any designer. But the choice of a font and the choice of an image does point readers into a direction with regards to the kind of book they're going to get. So you need to keep that in mind as you make your own cover. But let's say that we made our cover. I'm not going to use this one. I already made one. Um, we need to bring that back into our container here, which is our EPUB. To do that, I'm going to add an existing file and go to my folder. This is the cover that I made right here. And it adds it, notice, as an image. But in order to define it as a cover, we come to the tool here, Add Cover in Sigil, and we can pick an image that's in our container. So when you do this for yourself, you'll realize, oh yeah, I'm making a website and I need an image. So you need to put the image in your website. And you can't have an external image be inside your EPUB unless it's inside your EPUB. So this is the cover, and when I say okay, it'll make a cover page for it, and off we go. Very last thing we'll do is update the metadata. I'm going to put Maria Gentile's name in here, but this tool lets us. This is the title. Excuse me. The Italian Cookbook, and I'm doing it cook space book, because that's actually what the book is using. I'm aware from from spell check that it's actually one word, but but I'm using the two that is from the document. I can also add metadata though, like if I did want to get Maria Gentile's name in there, which I need for most books, you need at least the title, and in terms of the metadata, you need at least the title and the author. We can then select creator author using that add metadata button, and I'm going to put Maria Gentile in here, and that's it. If I save this file, save it in my finished documents, book version 9. When I save this document, it'll be a finished book that I can open in my ebook reader. So here's cookbook number 9, and I'm going to go and open this. I'm going to use this reader. Uh, Here's the Italian cookbook right here. There's this blank page, which I've not figured out, but since I know it's just quote HTML, I just have to go in there and manipulate something. But if I press page next, there's the cookbook. And I already see some issues with it, namely all of these page numbers here. But let me take a look at the navigation. Okay, need some navigation here. It's good. So that's the essence of working on an EPUB. The, the all we're doing is manipulating our text, adding a few HTML elements, possibly manipulating and recognizing a few of them, and then using the Sigil tool to format the table of contents, to split up the content, bring in a cover. It's very basic, but Sigil does provide a lot of power to get at all the different elements, all of the different aspects of an EPUB that you might want, so that it looks the very best to your eye. About 40 minutes in, I want to show you another technique though. What we've done is what I call formatting a EPUB, and it's a step that every book, I'm gotta believe, has to go through. You need to open up the HTML to at least look at it. Advanced book designers are probably going to use styles so that they can make the book have a certain appearance. Like these recipes, they could certainly be styled a different way, especially when we get to the bottom here. The recipes where there's actually ingredients, we may want to manipulate that and make it appear a certain way. So you want the more advanced features of HTML, and but there is another way to make an EPUB that does not involve Sigil, or at least, and that is you can take the entire content. I'm going to close this. You can take the book, and bring it entirely in a tool that lets you format it. And that tool is Microsoft Word. It's your word processor. Now, people who are fans of the Mac, if you have an Apple, uh, the good news with Apple is that you can use Apple Pages to output an EPUB. And in my slides, I have links to resources on how to manipulate your book inside Apple Pages so that when you output an EPUB, it looks good. But here in Microsoft Word, um, we've downloaded the entire EPUB, and what we can do, because Microsoft Word is maybe more familiar to us than Sigil, we can go and do this somewhat the same steps. We can go and first get rid of some of the boilerplate. But since we're in Microsoft Word, we can, I mean, here I've shrunk things down, and I'm eyeballing it, and I'm going a little fast. But once we have it looking like this, what we can do next is consider how we might be able to get a table of contents. Now, the tool we're going to use to convert from Microsoft Word to an EPUB is, at least on Windows, it's called Word to EPUB. It's a, I can't think if it's an open source tool, but it works in Windows, and it is a tool that I'm actually curious. GitHub? No. Um, this tool, though, works directly with Microsoft Word. When you install it, it adds a button to Microsoft Word. But before you press that button, what what we were doing inside of Sigil to identify the headers, to clean up the file, etc. We should do all of that inside of Microsoft Word, and the guidance for that is here in the getting started with EPUB. A lot of its guidance is simply, look, use styles. There's an advanced guide here where styles um, is mentioned. Okay, rehearsal note. There's nothing mentioned about styles, but because I know that Word to EPUB looks at the style, I'm going to point this out. Inside of your in Microsoft Word is set to the style normal. And what that means is that when the Word to EPUB file program looks at this document, it will use a style for every one. And rehearsal note, this is a little off the rails, this description here, because I realize it's at 45 minutes and I'm probably going to be out of time. So I'm going to jump to a properly formatted book. I'm going to click on close. I'm going to open up a new file that I have on my machine called the Italian Cookbook Formatted. And this is something I did as I was working. What you will notice is as I page down, or as I arrow down the document, you'll see the styles on the right change. This is the title using the book title style. This is heading 1. This is a quote style. This is a heading 2. And I went deeper, and for every recipe I made it a heading 3. What that does is it helps Word to EPUB identify sections of your document. And when you're working inside of a word processor, a tool that many people are familiar with, it makes it easy. I am also going to advise that if we want to add a cover, for example, we just come all the way down to the end and add an image to the back page. Now, there are other ways to do this, but this is the easiest way to include an image in the container, the EPUB. And when I click on Word to EPUB, I can select this file as my cover. And I'll show you that in a split second. But the other aspect of this formatting work is that I can edit the properties to have all of these tags in here using advanced properties. This is in Microsoft Word, but you can change this to be, I should have changed it earlier. This should change to Maria Gentile, um, and etc. So once I press this button though, and this is a button that came when I installed Word to EPUB. Oh boy, I have to save the file. Once I click on this, it will pop up a message saying, hey, we want to save it into this location. That's fine. But here's a button here called Advanced Mode. If I click on Advanced Mode, I can further manipulate the metadata, add more pieces that Microsoft Word did not allow me to add. I can also pick the cover image, an image from the document. And here, a section on headings, where you can import the heading in a browser. If I click on that, you can see all of the headings that it's identified. And this will be part of the table of contents. So this is the Word to EPUB inside of Microsoft Word. I am now going to say OK, and it will go and generate this book for us. It takes a moment, but it's fast, and it won't. It'll be less than 30 seconds. We'll have an EPUB. And once we have that EPUB, we're going to open it and see what it looks like. There's my new document, and I'm going to open it inside of, put it in Akil again. And there it is, the Italian cookbook. When I look at the table of contents, it looks very nice. The real test will be if I open this in Sigil to see how many HTML files there are. But in the end, that is another way to generate an EPUB. You have a choice of mixing. Either I'm going to work. You have a choice of workflows. You can work exclusively in your Microsoft Word document, or Apple Pages, or whatever tool, and rely on a converter program to convert your text in your word processor into an EPUB. Or you can, from your Microsoft Word, output some HTML. There's ways to do that, and either an export from Microsoft Word into HTML or an import of Microsoft Word from Sigil. Sigil supports plugins that do that. And then format your book in detail using Sigil. I went the Sigil route because I'm technical. I understand HTML. I understand CSS, and I mean, not very well, but I understand it enough to know that I would want to use these mechanisms. But if you're making a book for yourself, and HTML and CSS is not something you want to, not something you want to learn, or not something that you have time for, you can stay inside of Microsoft Word and just convert your book using a conversion tool. But be aware that to make your book look exactly how you want, you'll want to at least know somebody familiar with Sigil to manipulate it such that you get the look. We're wearing all the hats. We're the author. We're writing things. We're editorial. We copy edit. We fact check. We write our words. But we're also production. We're doing page layout. We're producing a book. We're generating a cover. That's both the peril and the joy of self-publishing. You have full control, and you don't have to go through a publisher to get your work out there. So I hope people are inspired by this to try their own ebook if that's something you've been wanting to do. You just wanted to learn what all this was about. I hope what I've shown you is straightforward enough that you can go and do it. I did it, and it was cool. It was cool to say, hey, I have a book on Amazon. Thanks again for checking out this rehearsal. Tomorrow, when I do this for real, I hope it goes well. I'm at minute 53, so that leaves about 7 minutes for people to give me questions. I'll probably cut it even further tomorrow. Maybe I'll skip some steps. I don't know. But I'm excited to have been doing all these rehearsals online. I'll catch up with everybody next time.